I'd like to paint a picture in your mind of a memory of mine. This memory is about 40 years old, over 40 years old. And it's a memory that stuck with me all my life and has shaped many of the decisions that I've made in my life, both with my career and my community, with my family. And I'd like to take you on a little bit of a journey based on that memory. Imagine a room, imagine a bright, sunny room. You've got big plate glass windows and the lights coming in. It's Seattle, Washington in the 70s, so that's pretty rare, but we'll take it. And in this room, there's people milling about, having conversations. There's clusters of people talking. And you can hear the sound of conversation intermixed with soft music. I'd like to think it was jazz, but who knows. And all around you, you see designs and these boards with colors and shapes of all different sizes. And this experience, this memory of mine, this room, it all means something to me because I learned the details much later in life, put the pieces together what this experience was. But in looking back, I think it was this moment that gave me the spark about activating space and making connections, unlocking spaces for unheard voices or people that otherwise wouldn't be able to be in those spaces or just wouldn't normally think about being in those spaces. I think many of us are sitting in one of those spaces right now. I've never been in this room. I'm not a student here, but we're all lucky to be in this space and enjoy each other's company and learn these lessons and hear about these journeys. This particular memory was an art exhibit. It was an exhibit that my mother, Jo Catherine Page, produced on a university campus in the middle of Seattle, Washington in the 1970s. This is the event right here. This is a bit of manipulation. I heard a few ahs. That's okay. You can let those go. This is me in the middle, and I believe that's my mother with the paper on the side. Now, I can't tell you who the artists were that day, or which piece sold the most, or how many people were in the room, or what type of wine they served. But I do remember that room. I do remember that experience. I remember that light. And that experience of being with those people and being with my parents was quite profound and stuck with me all my life. That experience of space activation that they did was something that they did all the time. And I would, of course, later learn that because we moved around a lot. My father worked for an organization in the States called the Urban League. So he moved around. We moved with him. My mother was very, very she adaptable. She taught, she started organizations, she did art exhibits, she brought people together. Through their social capital, they were able to make those rooms, and I watched that my entire life, and I picked up those lessons. If you open a door, you make sure it's open so other people can follow you through. And if you see a door open, just a little bit, put a little elbow into it and get in that room. And that experience followed me all over my whole life. And we moved around a lot. So we moved around from Seattle to Washington, D.C., to Chattanooga, Tennessee, to Denver, Colorado, where my parents are from. And eventually I moved to Brooklyn, New York, and then to the UK. And in moving around so much, I was always adapting myself to new experiences. I was always reintroducing myself to people and getting to know new people. And hi, my name is Jason, and yeah, I know I talk funny and I look funny, but I'm here, and how can I be useful, and making connections and building bridges and forming networks. Most of my friends would probably say that I've never met a stranger, and I'll take it. Because I'm always used to that new experience of just sticking out like a sore thumb and just getting stuck in. Asking the first question, making mistakes, being vulnerable. Never met a stranger. Now, this experience that my mom produced in the 70s, I just want to tell you a little bit about it. She recognized there was a lack of representation in the art world in Seattle, Washington. And she decided to use her social capital to do something about it. She got the space donated, she got the food donated. She featured only black and brown artists in Seattle. She got prisoners from the local prison to donate their artwork. They also made the frames and the panels that you see. And it was a successful event. The art sold. The room was full, space was free, the sun was out, and everybody was happy. It's easy, right? This spark, this experience, this memory, that room is what I've been chasing all of my life, that experience right there. And if anybody's ever tried to plan an event, I mean, I give it up to Rachel right here, you know that there's always something. There's always something at the last minute. There's always something you're very confident about, but it never goes to plan. This went to plan, and I'll never forget it, and it was something that I sort of carried with me. Now, after university, I moved to New York City, and I lived in New York City for 12 years, 10 or 12 years. I had several jobs. My career choices sort of followed that path, those decisions that I was making based on trying to find that room, trying to search for that room, trying to recreate that feeling, not only for me, but for other people that I was working with. First, I worked for an organization called Hope Community, which is a housing company in East Harlem. And one of the things that I did there was open up a space where the tenants could fight for their rights and meet safely. Next, I worked for the Brooklyn Children's Museum, the oldest children's museum in the world, and we made it possible, and we kept trying to find ways for families in the neighborhood to come to the museum affordably as, prices rose and Brooklyn became what we see today. And last, in New York City, I worked for an organization called Generation Engage, where we connected young people with the political process, with elected officials and policymakers, and movers and shakers, from Colin Powell, rest in peace, to Al Gore, to Spike Lee. One of the coolest events that I ever had was sitting next to Spike Lee on this side and a man named Michael Arad, who is an architect who designed one of the early versions of the 9/11 memorial. It's quite a conversation at PS1. I was so nervous. But my experience starting my career in New York City in this space, again, following that dream, following that spark, was always opening spaces, opening doors for people who otherwise wouldn't be in those spaces, and making connections and making sure that, again, if I got into that room, I was going to bring other people with me. If I saw a crack, I was going to push right through. I found myself at the intersection of young people, youth, and community, and the arts. And it was a pretty comfortable place. What I realized, though, was that spark, that perfect room, that perfect experience takes a lot of capital and a lot of resources. And again, when you don't have it, it's very hard to make those things run. And I had experience after I was unemployed, right before I moved to the UK, I produced 2 art exhibits based on the artwork of Emory Douglas, one in Brooklyn and one in Denver during the Democratic National Convention right before Barack Obama was elected president. They were both amazing, but nobody showed up. So, never met a stranger, but we don't always get it right. And I don't know whether that was dodgy partners or using too grandiose a vision, or maybe there was too much attention paid to this man who's about to change the world. But we all take our hits, we all take our losses. They say that it's not where you're from, it's where you're at. And 13 years ago this week, I landed in Lewisham, and I've lived here ever since. And Lewisham to me reminds me of every other place that I've lived, and most of the places that I love. It's very familiar to me, especially familiar to me and reminding me of Brooklyn, where I lived for most of my adult years. It's now pretty much half and half. And I don't know whether that is the proximity to central London, central town center, or the water, the river, or the fact that both the outer boroughs in New York City, specifically Brooklyn and Queens, and Lewisham, are the space where the docks were, or the shipbuilding and the warehouses. And so you've got the workers that lived and worked in those places that live in this part of the city. It's very unique. It's a very special place. And I would also add, because of that, the migration stories of all the people that came here, whether they wanted to or not. As a side note, one of the funniest things and most enjoyable things that I experienced, I work at the Migration Museum in the Lewisham Shopping Center. And every time somebody comes in and says, well, I'm not an immigrant, that's always a very fun conversation. So when I got to Lewisham, when I got to London, I got stuck in. This is a very familiar place to me. It felt like Brooklyn. But I noticed something. I noticed that many of the changes that I saw in Brooklyn in the 2000s were coming to Lewisham. I started to notice things about the high street changing, shops closing, blocks of flats going up faster than you could say supercalifragilistic. You know the word. And so I did only thing I knew how to do. I made the choices with my career based on those things that I wanted to do. Bring people together, open up spaces. I worked for a program called Somewhere To, which was a big lottery funded program that got young people 16 to 25 free space to do whatever they wanted to do. We matched young people with studios to record music, places to record videos, music showcases, teach classes, you name it, we did it. Skate parks, theaters, galleries, everything. And because I was obsessed with spaces, you could imagine every day, going into pubs, going into theaters, from the Serpentine Gallery to Goldsmiths, and talking to people about how we could use their space. Oh, well, no, we're closed from Monday to Friday. Can I have Tuesday night? Oh, Saturday night's can I have Sunday? Okay. That was my job. And to this day, it's such a joy to be stopped by young people who say to me on the street, I know you found me a space at this pub in Brixton for my musical showcase. And I'm so excited, but I'm like, who are you? Like, remind me, was it successful? Did you understand my crazy accent? So Somewhere To was an amazing program, and again, it fed that spark. I was searching for that room, and I found loads of them. It was fantastic. And the best part was, I wasn't the one producing the events. The young people were producing the events. So in a way, I was matching them and stepping back, which was amazing to do. I also did a number of other things. I started an organization called Gormandizing, which is a studio where we paint recipes we paint murals based on recipes that we collect from the community. I started with my good friend Matt McGinnis, who's an artist, and came up with this amazing conceptual idea of celebrating the diversity of a community on the walls of that particular neighborhood. So we would run workshops in schools, youth centers, kitchens, community kitchens, collect recipes from the community, and go through a process of doing a little bit of research, trying to find things that only the people with that knowledge and that history would recognize on those walls. We did Peckham, we did Bermondsey, London Bridge, Babur, Indian restaurant up in Forest Hill, Honor Oak, Father's Barbershop down on Deptford High Street, which has been painted over, sadly. Although I did hear from Father back in the day that somebody came in, a Goldsmith student, and he said they had taken our design and put it on the inside of an umbrella. And I told Father, if he sees that person again, hold them so I can get a check off them. I never saw the umbrella. So I was doing what I could. I also started an organization called South East Salon, which I'm very passionate about and I run to this day. South East Salon is a platform for Southeast London, organizations, people, and neighborhoods of Southeast London to bring us all together. And I consider it to be a global access point between Southeast London and the rest of the world, bypassing the rest of London, bypassing the rest of the UK, to connect all those places that we are equally familiar with Southeast London, because we are all here. So again, I was chasing that spark, chasing that room, chasing that experience. The salon would happen in different places around Southeast London, different neighborhoods, and we'd have music, we'd have food. It was always free, and people were always meeting people that they didn't already know and making connections. It was very exciting. Thinking about Brooklyn, being in Lewisham, seeing some of the same challenges, the same mistakes, I saw it coming. I saw it coming. The shops are closing. The high street's dying. There's the isolation, the flats going up. You look at Lewisham Town Center. One thing, I don't know how many of you live in we live in a bunch of little valleys in Lewisham in South London. From my house, you used to not be able to see red lights over hilly fields. And now when I look out different vantage points in Crofton Park, Brockley, you can see these red lights. I'm like, what is that, a UFO? No, they're the cranes rising up and bringing these flats up. People are flooding into our community, which is great. I flooded into your community 13 years ago this week. But what's happening is, I wonder, the people that are moving in, do they know about the Battle of Lewisham? Do they know about the New Cross fire? Do they know about Stephen Lawrence? Do they know what really happened in the Deptford docks? And I'm not talking about Sir Francis Drake or Sir Walter Raleigh, who have very nice plaques down at Deptford docks. I wonder those things, and it makes me sad to think that all of us are not really connected, that we're just coming out of our flats, getting onto the train, going to work, coming back, ordering Deliveroo, that's it, Netflix, and we're done. As opposed to getting out into the community and finding out about the Albany, finding out about MIDI music, the Horniman, Lewisham Youth Theater. That was just for you. So that was my experience. That was my frustration. And I think this is all one sentence, but I don't know whether it was the fatigue of 10 years of austerity or hostile environment or Brexit or COVID, but I think I and everybody else around me was getting very fatigued with dealing with this and dealing with our own troubles in our own lives, but then walking out of our doors and seeing the community that surrounds us just kind of going by the wayside. Yet there's new faces all the time. And again, I was one of those new faces, so I don't fault the new faces. I think that things need to come in balance. Things need to come in tandem. Everything rises together. So how do we do that? Chase those rooms. Make those connections. Open doors for people that otherwise wouldn't be in those rooms. I think we owe it to ourselves and to our community to do that work. I mean, just look around us. Lewisham is full of so much creativity. We've got Steam Down, we've got the Broccoli Jack, we've got all sorts of people doing wonderful things. Just up the road in Old Kent Road, Live See Exchange is about to break ground, out of Lewisham, but still an amazing model of how to use a space. They're about to break ground on a hub for creative people, mostly young people. Pen people, Live See, they're changing the game on Old Kent Road. Sister Midnight is about to take over a pub, the second one in Lewisham that is all community owned. It's going to be amazing, amazing music venue. And let's not forget about Borough of Culture or Creative Enterprise Zone. Loads of opportunities for us to make a difference in our communities. Shapes Lewisham, which is a network, a platform for creative people in Lewisham, but all over, to both promote themselves and stay connected. So I ask you, when you walk down the street, as I do, and you see these empty shops, or you might see things in the neighborhood like the shop that sells beer and hot sauce, or the new barber shop that cuts beards and carefully coiffed hair. You can tell I'm not lining up for that barbershop. How do you feel? Are you frustrated? Are you angry? Do you want to walk in and say something? Do you want to just retreat into your home and just sort of deal with it yourself? How do you cope with that? What do we do in those situations? Well, I've never met a stranger, and I'm still chasing that room and trying to find that spark. And so I ask you, can we live in love and empowerment and support one another and create a Lewisham where we've never met a stranger? Thank you.